Dear friends, you are listening to the book Glimpses of World History by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Chapter 12, The Call of the Past. January 17th, 1931. We have now had a brief look at the ancient world as it probably was up to about 2,500 years ago. Our survey has been very brief and very limited. We have only dealt with the countries which were fairly advanced or which have some kind of definite history. In Egypt, we have just mentioned the great civilization which produced the pyramids and the Sphinx, and many other things which we cannot go into now. This great civilization had had its day, and was on the decline even at this early period which we are considering. Knossos was also nearing its end. In China, we have traced vast periods of time during which it grew into a great central empire and developed writing and silk making and many beautiful things. We have had a glimpse of Korea and Japan. In India, we have just hinted at the old civilization represented now by the ruins at Mohenjo-daro in the Indus Valley, and the Dravidian civilization with its trade with foreign countries, and lastly, the Aryans. We have referred to some of the famous books which the Aryans produced in those days, the Vedas and Upanishads, and the epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And we have followed them spreading out over northern India and even penetrating to the south and in contact with the old Dravidians, building up a new civilization and culture which had something of the Dravidian in it and a great deal of the Aryan. Especially have we seen how their village communities grew up on a democratic basis and developed into towns and cities, and forest ashrams became universities. In Mesopotamia and Persia, we have only briefly referred to the growth of empire after empire. One of these later empires, that of Darius, extending to the river Indus in India. In Palestine, we have had a glimpse of the Hebrews, who, though few in number and living in a tiny corner of the world, have attracted a great deal of attention. Their kings, David and Solomon, are remembered when greater kings have been forgotten because they find mention in the Bible. In Greece, we have seen the new Aryan civilization grow up on the ruins of the older civilization of Knossos. The city-states have grown up, and Greek colonies have sprung up on the borders of the Mediterranean. Rome, which was to be great, and Carthage, its bitter rival, are just appearing on the horizon of history. All this we have barely glimpsed. I could have told you something of the countries which we have not mentioned, the countries of Northern Europe and Southeastern Asia. Even in these early days, Indian seamen from South India ventured across the Bay of Bengal to the Malay Peninsula and to the islands south of it. But we must draw the line somewhere, or else we shall never get on. The countries we have dealt with are supposed to belong to the ancient world. But remember that in those days there was not much communication between distant countries. Adventurous sailors went across the seas, and some people undertook long land journeys for trade or other purposes. But this must have been rare, for the peril was great. Geography was little known. The earth was supposed to be flat and not round. So no one knew much about any countries except those which were near. Thus people in Greece knew practically nothing of China or India, and the Chinese or Indians knew very little about the countries of the Mediterranean. Have a look at a map of the ancient world, if you can find one. Some of the descriptions of the world and maps given by the old writers are amusing. In those maps, the several countries assume extraordinary shapes. Maps of ancient times prepared now are much more helpful, and I hope you will often consult them when reading about these times. A map helps greatly. Without it, we can have no real idea of history. Indeed, to learn history, one should have as many maps and as many pictures as possible. Pictures of old buildings, ruins, and such other remains of those times as have come down to us. These pictures fill up the dry skeleton of history and make it live for us. History, if we are to learn anything from it, must be a succession of vivid images in our mind, so that when we read it, we can almost see events happening. It should be a fascinating play which grips us, a comedy sometimes, more often a tragedy, of which the stage is the world and the players are the great men and women of the past. Pictures and maps help a little to open our eyes to this pageant of history. They should be within reach of every boy and girl. But better even than pictures is a personal visit to the ruins and remains of old history. It is not possible to see all of these, for they are spread out all over the world. But we can always find some remains of the past within easy reach of us, if we keep our eyes wide open. The big museums collect the smaller remains and relics. In India, there are plenty of remains of past history, but of the very ancient days, there are very few. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are perhaps the only instances so far. It may be that many of the very old buildings crumble to dust in the hot climate. It is much more likely, however, that many of them still lie under the surface of the soil, waiting to be dug up. And as we dig them up and find old relics and inscriptions, the past history of our country will gradually open its pages to us, and we shall read in these pages of stone and brick and mortar what our ancestors did in the old, old times. You have been to Delhi, and you have seen some of the ruins and old buildings round about the present city. When you see them again, think of the past, and they will carry you back and tell you more history than any book. Right from the days of the Mahabharata, people have lived in Delhi city or near it, and they have called it by many names. Indraprasth, Hastinapur, Tughlakabad, Shahjahanabad. I do not even know all these names. Tradition tells us that there have been 7 cities of Delhi on 7 different sites, always moving because of the vagaries of the river Jumna. And now we see an 8th city, Raisina or New Delhi, rising up at the command of the present rulers of this country. Empire after empire has flourished in Delhi and has gone. Go to Benares or Kashi, that most ancient of cities, and give ear to her murmuring. Does she not tell you of her immemorial past, of how she has gone on while empires have decayed, of Buddha who came to her with his new gospel, of the millions who have gone to her through the ages to find peace and solace? Old and hoary, decrepit, dirty, smelly, and yet much alive and full of the strength of ages is Benares. Full of charm and wonder is Kashi, for in her eyes you can see the past of India, and in the murmur of her waters you can hear the voices of ages long gone by. Or go nearer still, to the old Ashoka pillar in our city of Allahabad or Prayag. See the inscription carved on it at the bidding of Ashoka, and you can almost hear his voice across 2,000 years. Dear friends, you're listening to the book Glimpses of World History by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru.